Hi, I'm Stacy Jagger. Welcome to the Inspiring Families podcast. Our goal is to help families heal, grow, and thrive by offering encouragement and empowering family members to connect with one another.
Well, I'm super excited to introduce all of you to one of my very favorite, and I really actually mean this, favorite people on the planet, DeAnne Chomiak with Philosophy of Leisure. And we're going to be talking today about this idea of rest, of balance, of reverse engineering your life so that you're really focusing on what brings you peace and joy and love and energy, and focusing on those things first, and then adding in your work around that, which is just a really interesting concept, DeAnne. I think most of us in America, we kind of plow forward and do all the things hoping that we have time to go for a walk, and we have time, maybe we'll have time for this or that, but you really have a completely different way of looking at this. And as I'm trying to inspire families, to really think about things from a different perspective, I wanted to have this conversation with you. I want to know how you stumbled upon this concept. I looked at your Instagram the other day. I think there's like 71,000 people following you, which is absolutely fantastic, which really speaks to the need when you think about it. Like, what a huge need. DeAnne is now a coach. She has a long background in the financial services industry, has an amazing story of success in that world, but also has a story of what money can and cannot do for you. And I think it's just a great, interesting conversation we can have. And I'm super happy to learn from you today, DeAnne, one of my favorite people on the whole planet. Welcome.
About you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I adore you. I love all the work you do, and so it's absolutely a pleasure to be here.
So DeAnne, talk to me about how you stumbled upon this idea of reverse engineering life in such a way where we don't wait until we're retired to enjoy life, but we get to enjoy life now, which looks like rest and balance and investing in yourself in a way that brings you joy one day at a time. I know there's a lot of similarities to this model with the 12-step recovery world, which I've been a part of since I was 19. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to listen to you, and we'll just have an informal, fun little conversation today. How about that?
Perfect. Sounds great. Well, as you said, it is a recovery model. I came out this from the perspective of a workaholic. Someone that had always used work and achievement to kind of try and fill a hole for things that were missing in my life. Mm-hmm. And I tell people who are in recovery for substances or shopping or other things, when an addiction is very, very socially acceptable, like working hard is, or exercising or being thin, it makes it even that much harder to stop because your identity is so wrapped up in this achievement. Mm-hmm. As you said, especially in the investment world, I am still the only woman to have run an investment distribution company in America. And it was very, very hard when I started realizing that I had reached the pinnacle. I'd gone further than I ever expected I would. And I still felt so sick. Like I felt so probably emptier than I'd ever felt in my life. And it really kind of snapped me out of it. But this was in 2009 when I left that world. I was burning out. I had a really unhealthy lifestyle. And at that time, I thought I had two choices. I could either stay. I really thought there was something wrong with me. I didn't, that why couldn't I keep up and keep working 80 hours a week? And why wasn't all this money and stuff fulfilling me the way I thought it would, an achievement?
Yeah, right.
I thought the choices were either to stay and really work myself to death, or to check out, to raise chickens, or to move to the French countryside. Or I didn't think there was anything. So you know me.
DeAnne, I did the chicken thing. Let's just skip the chickens. I did that for you and for me. Okay, keep talking.
I was going to say, you know me, so the chicken route was not going to be for me. So I went to the French countryside.
Oh my goodness.
And to Italy and to South Africa and to Bermuda and all over England. I just went wherever the wind blew me for a year. I was, very blessed that I had a little bit of money that I was able to kind of just try and reset and figure out how to find that causeless joy I had as a kid, that joy for just no reason, when you're sitting in fresh mown grass and you're just happy. And so I really went lots of places looking for it. I still didn't really understand, though, what was ailing me. And so through a lot of trial and error, I kept trying to find a different model. And what I realized was that if I didn't put guardrails around my workday as a workaholic, it was super easy to just flip right back into those habits that weren't healthy for me. So I decided to do some research, lots and lots of scientifically reviewed papers, lots and lots of, neuroscientists and all sorts of things. And I started putting together this puzzle of things that actually are proven time and time again to help humans be healthy and happy. They are things like relationships and movement, exercise like walking, gentle movement, lifelong learning, a faith practice of some sort. It doesn't have to be traditional, but a faith practice of some sort, all of those things. And so I kind of put, bookends on either one of my work day to prevent me from being able to work more than 8 to 10 hours a day. And it really started working so well. The happiness started returning. My health started returning. I was being more creative, more innovative. I was actually being more successful and making more money in my work. And I thought, oh, this is something I've got to share with other people. And so that's kind of how Philosophy of Leisure came to being. And so now I help people, and it's interesting because it's not just CEOs and people from the business world. It's musicians, it's website designers, it's entrepreneurs, it's stay-at-home moms who are just overachievers at being stay-at-home moms. And
absolutely.
And so I kind of brought this model, and it's been really, really helpful. We've been really delighted.
So I'm just guessing that when people first kind of are introduced to this idea that they may even come up with something like a plan that may not be very realistic in the beginning. Is that common? Are you seeing that?
The most common
thing, I'm gonna have a 2-hour yoga class in the morning, and I'm gonna, this is what I'm gonna do. So do they swing it the other direction and then they kind of come to the middle ground? Like, what has been your experience so far coaching people? I'm just curious.
No, I usually have the opposite problem. Like I joke that I wished I had just one client that would say that I'm going to go all in the other way and you help me kind of moderate. No, I really oftentimes have to drag them kicking and screaming to take lunch, to take 30 minutes from lunch. To not do their practice first thing in the morning. They just can't. I mean, I heard somebody just recently, actually on the 10% Happier podcast, when talking about addiction and saying that the primary addiction is to identity, is to self, and all the others are kind of come from that. And I thought, it's true, isn't it? Because if our identity is being this fantastic worker, this fantastic mother or dad, this fantastic CEO, this fantastic website designer, this fantastic whatever, or being, a writer who is fueled by alcohol, or whatever it is, your identity is really the first. And so getting people to prying people's fingers off of this overachievement is really difficult. So I usually have to start very slowly and just get them to do one thing at a time. And then as they feel better and they see that their life doesn't implode, then they get much, much more invested in the process. But I don't have anyone that I took them from working 16 or 17 or 18 hours a day, and now they only work 4. That just doesn't happen. It's much more this incremental process because they are just so attached to that identity of being a super achiever in whatever they do.
You know what, DeAnne? My father was a lifetime alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about the way that I was raised. I was evicted 15 times by the time I left home at 16. I've told you this before.
Mm-hmm.
And how bad that looks publicly. And yet the research shows that children of alcoholics and children of workaholics, that the effects are exactly the same, which is mind blowing when you think about it, right?
Well, they're all serving
So,
the same purpose or the same problem, which is to distance ourselves from relationships, from the things that are uncomfortable. It protects us, we think, from getting close to others or being vulnerable. And so, yes, it does that. And I have family members, as you and I have spoken about, that have substance abuse issues and other issues, and they've come in and they've apologized, they've made their amends, and of course. But I've also said to them, just because my addictions were so socially acceptable, do not for 1 minute believe that they weren't just as awful in the consequences for you and for me. And it's a really eye-opening kind of conversation. But yeah, you and I have talked about our childhoods not being ideal, let's say. And so we did swing so far the other way. We wanted this, security of knowing that we wouldn't be evicted, or in my case, that I wouldn't be shunned because I hadn't achieved enough, or whatever it was. And you and I have also discussed about many of the people that I coach, they are still trying to prove something to someone from their achievement, even if that person is no longer living and they just don't realize, still trying to prove something or to protect themselves from that uncertainty of their childhood. And there's no way to do it, as you know. There's no way to make sure that you're safe.
So it's really, and more talking with you, it's more about connecting really well to yourself, right? So that you know that your identity, who you are, is not what you do. It's not the label that's put on you. And, I don't know if you've read the book, The Surrender Experiment with Michael Singer, or This Naked Now with Richard Rohr. But it's this idea of really understanding that you are not your thoughts, you are not your job, and to get kind of behind all of that and to start to connect with who you are on the inside so you can observe your thoughts, you can observe what you do, but who you are is very much separate from that. And it sounds like you've kind of stumbled upon a way of working with people that helps them to connect better to themselves. Yes?
That's exactly it. And, it's also not the shoes you wear, or the number of passport stamps you have in your passport, or how large your house is. Those are the clients I get. I have a Jimmy Choo named after me. And, that was a core part of my identity. I was the number one client of Jimmy Choo at South Coast Plaza in Southern California for many years. And that became part of my identity. And whether I wanted to be that or not, I really felt like that was one of the things that people liked about me and, liked being around me, no matter how much it was hurting my heart to think that's who I was, because your brain subconsciously knows that's not okay, that's not healthy, and that you can't possibly buy enough shoes or have a big enough house or, get enough, enough promotions to fill that void if it's empty. So yeah, it really is trying to connect with yourself. When I start doing time blocking with my business clients, and I tell them to have at least one Schultz hour a week, which is a thinking hour. That's another thing they really push back. It's very hard to just sit with your own thoughts. Now I'm doing it for the purpose of ideating in your business and your career and things like that. But just getting them to understand that it's okay to have nothing to do. As a matter of fact, it's really valuable to not have something to do all the time, to be able to sit with your thoughts and be uncomfortable with the difficult thoughts and the difficult feelings, but also to be comfortable with, just letting your mind wander and daydreaming about future and your business and your family and where you want to be in your life in 5 years.
Yeah.
With someone the other day, we spend the first 50 years of our life accumulating possessions and accomplishments.
You told me this. It's so great.
We spend the next 30 years trying to get rid of it all and to focus on our relationships and our experiences.
You just see my garage right now with my 4 kids. Yeah.
I now have things in one of my closet, my guest room closets that are my grandchildren's. It's like it's never ending. If we could just teach our young adults when they're first starting out to focus on their relationships and the things that make humans happy rather than jobs. And many of them are already connected with this. That's one of the things the younger generations are much better. But if you look at the Harvard study, and you'll know the name of the scientist running it, it's the longest study on happiness, I think, ever. It's like 80 years old. And they say the number one secret for happiness and longevity, by the way, but full stop, number one, love and relationships.
Yes. Wow.
Yet all the addictions that we have, again, whether it's gambling or shopping or substance, it doesn't really matter. Work is meant to keep us safe from other people and safe from being vulnerable. So all of these things, really go into preventing the one thing we actually need.
DeAnne, when you start working with somebody, where do you begin? Like, what's the first step?
We talk through, where they are, why they're coming to me. And then on the very first coaching call, I usually say it takes, a little bit more time than an hour. We usually spend an hour and a half, and we go through what their schedule is like. And we kind of deconstruct it, and we start putting in the things so I start with meditation and prayer.
Yeah.
Get your mind straight. And also, as you and I have talked about, meditation is really a little mini vacation for your brain. Like, for the first time, your brain can actually rest and think instead of being just frantic all the time. So I usually put that in first, and we work on it, and we start taking out the things in their life that we all think we have to do all of these. We have to have our kids in so many activities. We have to, have the house perfectly clean. We just have to do all these things. And yet when you start looking at it, there really is a lot that you don't have to do. And we start taking out things and replacing them with some of the habits that make people, like I said, feel healthier, happier, more at ease, and more connected to the people in their life. And from there, it just kind of begins this snowball process. And what it ultimately does, Stacy, is it contracts the number of hours they're able to work. So now if you only have 8 hours, what are you forced to do? You're forced to do the things that really move the needle, that do make a difference in your business and in your income. And that's why people end up being happier and more successful and making more money, is because they're doing more of the stuff that really matters in their career, and they're doing less of all the peripheral stuff that's kind of a time waster in whatever their case is.
So it sounds like you're like a big infusion of hope with people that just have not been able to find a solution, and they're just kind of in a rat race, like doing the same thing every day and can't get off the wheel. Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. And I think they're getting this continual message of, you can't rest until all the work is done. We can't have dessert. We've cleaned our plate. We can't rest or play until we've done all of our work. But because of the society we live in now, where there's 24-hour connectivity possible, the work is never all done. We could never ever possibly be done with everything that we could do or think we should do. So when some of the posts on my social media, like it's okay to rest even when there's still work to do, or it's important to have days that are completely unscheduled and unproductive, or daydreaming is important. I mean, it's actually, by neuroscientists now will say it is a way to reset your brain, daydreaming during the middle of the day, kind of like napping in the middle of the day. when I actually say those things to clients, to coaching clients, people cry. People cry when I tell them it's okay to sleep 8 hours a night. Just basic things. And you can speak to what happens to people when they don't get sufficient sleep, what happens to your mind, and, psychotic events happen. And I mean, it's really terrible. But yet many clients, when they come to me, they're getting a maximum of 6 hours of sleep a night. Many of them are trying to operate on 4 between the kids. They might have parents.
Yeah.
And work, all of the community things they want to do. It's all good things. Don't get me wrong. But there's plenty of us to share the load, and you getting enough rest, you're going to show up better in every area of your life, including to your, work, including to your children and to your spouse. And, I say a lot of times that my ultimate goal is to show that, working less, working to live rather than living to work is not only good for the individual, but it's good for their family. It's good for their community. It's good for the country. It's good for other cultures. And it's ultimately good for the planet, because when we get things straight in our mind, we're wiser consumers. We're better, global citizens. We give other people, other nations a chance to rise when we don't take all the toys and, in the Western, more developed countries, we allow other countries to rise if we're not trying to keep all the work and all the success here. So it's because most of the people I coach really do care about other people. Many times that is the only way I can get them to look at a different way of doing things, is to say, this isn't selfish because you are going to show up better for your family, for everyone around you.
Talk about how you stumbled upon meditation and how it's, really kind of changed the way you live.
So that story is quite interesting. I'm a practicing Christian, and the pastor that I was really close to in Southern California, he had actually studied to be a Buddhist monk, and he was raised in a traditional religion, but he had left during his teenage years and decided he wanted to become a monk, and he all of the steps and everything. But when he went to be ordained, his teacher said, "You're not going to be a monk." He said, "Your heart is still in the church." So he brought back some of the things that he had learned, including meditation and a few other.
Interesting.
And so that goes back a long time, but my practice was quite on and off. And then, as you know, I lost my wonderful husband to cancer quite suddenly 7 years ago. And I was really struggling with grief. And both my pastor in Florida at the time, and I reconnected with the gentleman, Michael, who was the original pastor that had introduced me to it. I'd reconnected with him. He was a hospice minister, a hospice chaplain at the time. And they both suggested 2 things that I do, that I start meditating and that I pray gratitude for what had happened. And those 2 practices combined really kind of turned my grief around in lots of ways. But then I stumbled upon Dan Harris's 10% Happier app. I did a formal practice. I stumbled upon that, and I really connected to him because here was this overachieving news anchor who had anxiety issues like I did from being this overachieving perfectionist. And he had had an anxiety attack on air, reading the news on Good Morning America. And
I saw it.
I know you did. I know you did.
Yeah.
And that was really the impetus for me to say, okay, look, at least my anxiety attacks don't happen on national television. So he must have something. He's really, gone out and tried to uncover. So he went back and he, read and researched and, went full journalistic mode on, what was wrong and this right thing. So he went back to his religion from birth, which was Judaism. He investigated the New Age movement. He investigated all sorts of things. And nothing really resonated till he started practicing meditation. Just that ability to quiet that mind that's always telling you need to do more, you're not enough, or this is never going to work out, or all of that. And the first week I did it, and this has probably been 5 years ago now. I mean, you and I can probably compare notes there. 5 or 6 years ago. The first week I was like, it changed my life. And I wanted to tell everyone I knew about it. And I have. And I share it with every single coaching client. I send them a free 30-day guest pass to try it.
Yep.
And it really was kind of the missing piece for me, because in my prayer life, I found that I was always, asking for something or thanking, God for something. And, my apologies, because whatever your practice is absolutely fine with philosophy of leadership.
Yeah, absolutely.
Accept any faith practice or philosophy or whatever you want to practice. But I always felt like there was some kind of something that I needed to accomplish in my prayer life, where with meditation, it was just quieting my mind. And one of the courses I know I shared with you that really brought it home. I'm a scientist, a mathematician, a data lover. I need factual things. I'm not very woo-woo.
Yeah.
Probably tell. So one of their courses, the one that was done by the neuroscientist here at Vanderbilt, and they would do PET scans with people that were meditating and people that weren't meditating at the same time.
Uh-huh.
And then they would compare the PET scans. And, the person that wasn't meditating, all of their brain was firing normally. It looked healthy. Everything was fantastic. But by contrast, the person that was meditating, their whole brain was completely quiet, except for everything right in the front, where
The prefrontal cortex.
your executive function is, your decision making, your creativity, like where all the good stuff is, was the only part of the brain that was really consistently engaged. And so I just found that my decision making became better, my ability to remain calm despite very difficult things. And
Right.
had very, very difficult things in my personal life in the last several years, like things that I think, before might have really destroyed me, but that I'm able to calmly assess, where I am and what needs to be done, and then take the right action. And so for me, that's really, what the meditation part of it does for me. I still rely on my faith, but I know that I need the other just to keep my brain, calm and engaged. I like to say that prayer feels a lot like exercise for the brain, where meditation feels a lot like rest for my brain.
Yeah.
I'll say the same thing about how I coach too. I often will compare it to an automobile with my clients, and just say, an automobile is made out of metal and plastic and rubber and glass and a lot of other kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens if you just drive this automobile endlessly without filling it up with gas, or putting, lower grade gasoline in it, or without taking it into the mechanic to have things checked out and belts changed and tires rotated? It's the same really with us. And
Yeah.
we're made of much better stuff, much more magic than an automobile is. And what we're doing is putting these things in place that are really keeping our bodies and our souls and our brains tuned up, if you will.
I can't believe it's been 5 years. Is it 5 years ago that you introduced 10% Happier to me, DeAnne?
I think it was probably, it was probably 5 or 6 years. Yeah.
5 or 6 years. So let me tell you this quick story. And if I'm not telling it right, you can fix it. But my memory is you introduced 10% Happier to me. And then I turned around and went to Soul Shine Pizza, which was not too far from where you were living and where I was living at the time. And the owner of this pizza shop and I just got to talking, and he found out that I was a therapist, and he just started talking about, well, tell me about your meditation practice. Well, as a therapist, I had been in the 12-step world for many years. And for those of you that are listening, step 11 in the world of recovery is all about prayer and meditation. So as a professional therapist, I felt like I was under a lot of pressure to be really smart about this meditation thing he was talking about. In the course of that conversation, he basically just called me out and said, "You don't know anything about meditation." He said, "I can tell you know nothing about it." And because he was a very kind man, and he has since sold his pizza business and has gone back to school to become a therapist and reached back out to me. It was kind of a full circle kind of moment. But
what a great
so
story.
I went home directly home, and I was like, okay, God is trying to talk to me clearly, because I have had, more than one person say it's time for you to look this up. So I started the 10% Happier app. I guess it's been I can't believe it's been that long ago. But anyway, so 5 or 6 years ago, and I too tell all of my clients about it. And my morning routine now is I wake up before all of my 4 kids are, they're all asleep. I get up early. I go down. It's winter. So I turn my fireplace on. I lay down. So that's my meditation, is laying down by my fireplace. I do my 10% Happier. I don't do the class every morning, but I'll do some sort of a meditation. Joseph Goldstein is my favorite. So I feel like he has the voice of God, truly. So I will do a meditation typically with Joseph. And then after that, I will do the Daily Still podcast, which is more of a Christian meditation lady that I follow. And then I go to my little gym and my workout, little workout routine, and I get a 20, 30 minutes in. And that's kind of what I do in the mornings. And it has very much grounded me, where I know that I can count on myself to show up for myself, right? Where before that, if I'm completely honest, I was showing up for my children. I was showing up for my husband. I was showing up for my neighbors. I was showing up for my family, for my clients, but I really wasn't showing up for me very well. So thank you, DeAnne. And thank you to the Soul Shine Pizza guy. I can't even remember his name right now.
And I think you hit the nail on the head that, life is going to throw all sorts of things at us. Life is about ebbs and flows and difficult seasons and easy seasons. And we really can get thrown around by that if we don't have practices that ground us. And I find that all of these things, so the meditation, the prayer, or philosophy, whatever it is that you practice, the exercise, the eating well, sleep, relationships with others, those are the things that you can always come back to when the world is beating you up, when work is beating you up, when a relationship has failed, whenever it is that you need it, when your health isn't great, you can always go back to these things that ground you. And because the rest of it, as the saying goes, is shifting sand. You can't build your life on shifting sand. So I'm just really pleased that it helped. I do remember though, we were at Coffee and Coconuts, and you were trying to decide between which direction to take your business. And you, of course, have always been super successful. And you said, I just don't know, what should I do? Like, what advice? And I said, just pick one. And you said, what? And I said, just pick one. I said, you're going to do well at whichever one you choose. And if you decide you don't enjoy it, you can always go back. And you looked at me and you said, just pick one. And you said, what are you doing? What's different about you? Like, what do you know that I don't know?
I could immediately tell in your countenance, in your affect, that something was
different.
Something had changed. It was that obvious, DeAnne, truly. Yeah.
And I find with all of my clients, the same thing. And, it's wonderful that after the first 2 sessions or so, they come on, they're different. And the really interesting part about it that I'm going to start doing a lot more work on, I'm probably going to have a paid newsletter around it. And all of my business clients are working on it, but they suddenly take up a musical instrument. They start writing, they start painting, they start doing all of these things that they either haven't done since they were a child that they really loved, or that they never knew they could do. Like they really start blossoming in this lifestyle that they never imagined they could have. And I think that's the part of it that really brings everything back around. Is it's not even necessarily how much you work. It's what you do during your off hours that matters. And right things. So it's not binging on Netflix. It's not video games, although there's nothing wrong with those things. And I am the first one to say, I'm going to binge Netflix if I don't feel well, or if it's a snow weekend or whatever. Nothing wrong with it at all. But But on a daily basis, are you connecting with those you love? Are you meditating? Are you, do you have a spiritual practice? Do you work out some way, mostly walking and yoga and swimming? We really like people to do activities that don't cause long-term harm to their body.
Yeah, right.
So are you doing those things? Because as you know, I mean, it's now kind of showing that exercise can really take care of up to 85% of depression and anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely.
People. And I'll let you speak to the numbers and the science behind that, but just doing those sorts of things and them pull you out of the habits or the addictions you have.
Yeah.
Really does work. And it's just
I
wonderful.
find that interesting, DeAnne, of what you're talking about with your coaching clients wanting to play an instrument, wanting to, make different recipes, and they're inspired. I think that that's the brilliance of stillness and quiet. And I've had a very similar experience with, having walked hundreds of families through digital detoxes.
Yes.
I've got a book called 30-Day Blackout for those of you that don't know. Because of an early experience of having had an opportunity to live in a little cabin in the middle of nowhere, with no electricity. This was in my very early 20s. My nervous system regulated for the first time in my life because of that experience. And so fast forward, 20 years, and I'm working with families with kids with very dysregulated nervous systems. I intuitively knew what they needed. They needed stillness. They needed quiet. They needed everything to be turned off for a while, right? But these were families with multiple children who had never not woken up with a television on, who had never not gone to bed without an iPad to entertain them. So these were children that didn't really know what stillness was, and the whole idea of boredom was just unbelievable. Like, what do you mean? I bet I'll be bored.
Unbearable.
Right. But I have coached many families in realizing that once you walk through the door of boredom, where you really think boredom's going to kill you, it never does. Boredom doesn't kill people. It doesn't kill children, doesn't kill the elderly, it doesn't kill anybody. When you walk through that door and get on the other side of it, that is when you really become willing to do things that you were not willing to do before. Like, I want to learn how to play the piano again. I haven't played since I was a child. Or, kids that want to pick up a ukulele and learn how to play an instrument. It's such a fun thing to watch. I'm sure you've experienced that too, DeAnne.
Recommend that book, your program, to so many people, because I think it's an epidemic, honestly. I mean, I'll start by telling them, okay, if you can't do screen time limits because you're working and the kids are schooling at home, then just turn everything off for 1 hour. Everybody has to turn everything off for 1 hour, the dinner table, or for a walk. And when they get that taste, like you said, of the quiet and the stillness, they don't want to let go of it. They really start getting attached to it. And the other part of that, especially when kids start learning, music is proven to help with math scores. I mean, it uses your whole brain when you learn music, when you play music. So it's, like you said earlier, it's this circle, comes fully back around, that once you do start understanding the intrinsic value of leisure, the intrinsic value of relationships and music and art and stillness and all these things, it ends up paying off in the long run, even in your business success, which is, that to me is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Is you have to, reduce my success to have all these other things that I want and need. But it, in fact, actually feeds success and creativity and innovation.
DeAnne, I think you're brilliant.
I think you are too. And you're just one of the loveliest humans on the planet. So
it's
lovely to see you. I'm looking forward to dinner soon.
I know. Talk about if somebody wanted to reach out to you, how would they do that?
So you can find me at philosophyofleisure.com. I'm also there on all the social networks as well. So Facebook and Instagram. And I'm probably most active on Instagram just because I have a teenage grandson who insists that I am there. No,
It's so great.
I know, right? He's like,
Uh,
yeah, and he's a meditator as well. We started him meditating when he was about 15. And, I think
uh-huh.
meditation for children is off the chart brilliant. But Philosophy of Leisure, you can find me in social media and on the website. And I look forward to helping in any way I can.
Thank you, DeAnne. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely mine. Continued success, darling.
Thank you for listening to the Inspiring Families podcast. Please subscribe to our feed and share this with your family and friends.